being here. My name is Kashinda Marche, and as mentioned in the intro, I'm originally from New Jersey, but I relocated to Raleigh a little over 5 years ago because I reached a place in my life where I knew something was changing. My health was declining, and my daughter, she was off during her college life. And I was alone, in a sense. I have family, I have friends, but I find myself in a space where I asked, now what? During this time, I had just survived my 4th brain surgery. And I knew how blessed I was. I became so thankful for life, just life, period. And I knew that even though I was dealing with X, Y, and Z, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, all of that, that there was a purpose for my life.
Yes.
And so here I am today. Isaiah 54:17 teaches us, no weapon formed against us shall prosper. And no matter where I go to share my voice and share my truth, I live by that scripture because there's a lot of things in my life that you would think will work against me. You know, I face a lot of challenges day to day, all day. But still, I do not let it win. HIV, human immunodeficiency virus, AIDS, acquired immunodeficiency syndrome, HIV, AIDS, HIV, AIDS, HIV, AIDS. I remember there was a time when I struggled to speak those words. To God be the glory. It wasn't until September 5th, 1995 that I found myself in a space having to speak those words. They were said to me. Before then, I had no reason to speak them. Back in the early 80s and the 90s, those were words no one wanted to hear. No one still wants to hear them. But fast forward to now, these are words that we need to hear because it exists. And until we learn to face this epidemic head on as individuals, as families, as communities, as churches, as a society, how are we to put it in to the stigmas that surround it? I speak up for those who have not yet found the strength to do so for themselves. I speak up because God led me to. I speak up for our children. I speak up in hopes of educating, empowering, and maybe even inspiring someone who may need it. So I will not give in, and I will not give up.
That's right. All right. That's right.
As a storyteller, it is my passion to paint mental visuals using words and vocalizations. Today, I'd like to share a quick version of my story, and I ask that as you listen to my words, you hear them in terms of your own life journeys. So get comfy in your seats, and we're going to take this ride. Amen?
Amen.
I call this one a shelter for sickness. How did I become a shelter for sickness? She asked herself and God that question a gazillion times. You see, her story began long before she knew she had one. Depression was the first knock at her door. And because this impressionable young lady wasn't aware of its initial attempt to enter, over time, it forced its way into her. Depression is something we all may be familiar with on, a lower level spectrum, but it can become overwhelming, and it did so for her, and it spun out of control quickly. Failed chances at love, disappointing financial crises, and an unexpected future of events led her to attempting to end her own life on several occasions. It was just too much for a young person to endure. But God spared her for a reason.
That's right.
The second knock at her door was HIV, a diagnosis that had impacted her the most. It stole everything from her, or at least she allowed it to. 1 in 4 women are living with HIV, and that is according to womenshealth.gov. The average person doesn't even know they are carrying the virus. She had no clue. This young lady's depression had maxed out. She forfeited gifts and dreams she hadn't become to know about yet. Her life moved on in silence. She had decided she wasn't worth the effort. No one knew what she was going through. The manic episodes, homelessness, rejection after rejection, and the shame of it all. Keeping it real, the world we live in today has indeed come a long way. However, there is still so much work to be done. A cure for HIV will be nice, but as of right now, most of her conditions are deemed incurable, yet manageable. How so? When some believe the cure already exists, but that's another conversation. Can she save someone from a dreadful knock? Maybe. She began to believe that she could, and that she can bring awareness to these invisible illnesses. And until a cure shows up at her door, they remained housed within her. I'll move forward because it doesn't end there. There were several more knocks as her life barely moved on. Hidradenitis suppurativa, which is a chronic skin condition that has her skin so scarred, she's ashamed of her own nudity. Peripheral neuropathy, which is a type of nerve damage, and reoccurring brain cysts, which resulted in repeated brain surgeries. She's left with major hormonal imbalances that she must orally replace in order to continue to live on. Doctors, surgeons, therapists, assistive medical devices, and the love from her family and friends is what keeps her going. And God takes really good care of her. Her life has been filled with many situations and unfortunate circumstances stemming from her many health conditions. But this woman continues on. Who is she? You may be wondering by now. She is me. There are many people who may have had similar knocks at their doors, but I can only speak for myself, and I speak from experience. Your life has purpose.
Amen.
The effects of the many health conditions have been debilitating, not just physically, but mentally, spiritually. As you can see, I've lost the ability to walk unassisted. But making the adjustment to a lifestyle that requires the use of a walking cane, 4-wheeled walker, and I even have a power chair for my worst days. For me, that's a lot to adjust to. The nerve damage has weakened the use of my hands, just like my feet. I barely have feeling in them. I am someone who fights so hard to maintain my independence. I was one of those that I got this, I got this, I got that. I am a mother who fought so hard to raise her daughter with all the fundamentals I felt needed just to have a fair shot at a stable life. Not a rich life or a famous life, but a spiritual life. It was important for my daughter to understand respect. I did what I had to do with what I had. So after adapting to this challenging life that had developed, I found a breakthrough. I have found my freedom. I am free from the darkness that held me captive due to the shame of being a shelter for sickness. It has been and continues to be an extremely difficult experience living a life with multiple chronic conditions. Some may feel saddened as you listen to my story. The truth is, I get saddened by it too sometimes. But my story also carries a happier thought on a happier note. I've chosen to love my life with a sense of positivity because I refuse to be anybody's sad story if I can help it. Some can't. And I'll stand for them as others have stood for me. I believe that by sharing my life experiences with others, that maybe they can recognize something within themselves that will allow them to hope and believe and to dream again. I will remind them that our lives have a purpose, no matter how small, no matter how messy, no matter how subtle. You have a purpose, and God has positioned me to help people realize that. Myself and all the strong, inspiring, and influential women here today and beyond. But because of every embarrassing moment, every great cloud above, every abusive encounter, and mostly the love of God, I found purpose through it. Becoming aware of self and the removal of my egotistical ways are my biggest achievements towards a better me, and I claim it. Awareness has taught me so many things, most which is to be shared with others, but there are some things that are just too personal, and that's okay, because being personal and transparent are two different aspects that our world today would like us to twist up into a beneficial knot of agenda-based behaviors. But we won't go there. When God calls, hello, I answer. When you get to know yourself well enough, you learn that your choices don't have to match up with anyone else's unless you choose so. I have dreams again of helping others however I can. Oh, and I claim that. I have witnessed the personal and spiritual growth of my daughter, friends, and family, and I claim that. If it wasn't for God working it out for me, if it weren't for God protecting me, loving me, accepting me, I wouldn't have anything to claim at all. So today, I am honored to stand, well, sit before you and claiming it all. I claim all of my mistakes, all of my struggles, and I claim my victories. Our ancestors told us that change was going to come, and today I know it as a fact. One must think deeper to gain clarity. Unapologetic for my deep thinking, I feel hope for change more so than fear, which wasn't easy to conclude. With each day we are blessed with, we must acknowledge the potential for change, voluntarily or involuntarily. I have been awakened through reflection, frustration, and experience. Now I am confident enough to live in a new light. What you may call being brave, for me, felt like being fed up. What you may consider courage, for me, felt like being time to hold myself accountable for my actions. I prayed. You too can be awakened. Your flaws, insecurities, mistakes in your heart, those are your tools designed to assist in the navigation of your journey. If you ever felt anything like me, then you already know what defeat feels like. How about we experience something different for a change? Now, keeping it all the way 100, It's been a profound process, an ongoing process, and it ain't nothing simple about it. It's layers to life. Coping comes with a host of tools that help me along the way, and I now see how blessed I am to have my life. I have learned to be grateful for the small things and that I more than likely had taken advantage of once upon a time. We are all on our journeys, and they're just slightly different enough to be uniquely ours. We all have our own stories.
Amen.
Claim them and live them as well as you can.
Yes.
Be alive, be open to learning, and continue to grow. It has been 24 years since I received an HIV diagnosis,
Amen.
which I do not claim.
That's right.
And I'm still here. To God be the glory.
Amen.
I am African American, and I am enough. I am celibate, and I am enough. A prayed up kind of woman who has started from scratch many, many times, and God has delivered me time and time again. I am living, surviving, and thriving with HIV, and I am enough. Thank you for having me.